In Salt Lake City, two separate apocalypses are waiting to happen on the exact same day. On the west side of the valley, in suburbs like West Valley City and Magna, the ground will turn to quicksand. Not an exaggeration. A physical transformation from solid earth into a liquid soup. Homes will not just shake. They will tilt, sink, and be swallowed by the soil they were built on. At the exact same moment, on the East Bench, in neighborhoods like Sandy and Draper, the ground will be torn in half. A violent, vertical rupture. The earth itself will drop by as much as 12 feet, instantly creating a cliff face that runs through streets, parks, and houses. There is a 43% chance of this happening in the next 50 years. That is not a prediction. That is not a worst-case scenario. That is the statistical probability calculated by the Working Group on Utah Earthquake Probabilities, the official body of scientists who study this fault. Their models forecast over 2,700 fatalities, up to 84,000 households displaced, $33 billion in immediate economic damage. And here is the part nobody truly grasps. The deadliest threat isn't the shaking itself. It is a decision made 100 years ago. A decision to build a city out of 140,000 brick time bombs. So, what happens when a modern American metropolis, built on the ghost of an ancient lake bed, finally meets the earthquake it was always warned about? Here is the number you need to hold in your head. 1,400 years. That is the last time the Salt Lake City segment of the Wasatch Fault unleashed a major, surface-rupturing earthquake. Not a tremor. Not a moderate shake like the one that hit Magna in 2020. A full-scale, magnitude 7.0 cataclysm. The recurrence interval. The average time between these massive events on this specific fault segment is between 1,300 and 1,500 years. We are at year 4,100. That is not a projection. That is not an activist talking point pulled from a policy brief. That is the measured geologic clock, documented in trenches dug across the fault line, confirmed by scientists at the Utah Geological Survey. The strain is not leveling off. It has not been released. It is accumulating at a rate of 1 to 2 millimeters every single year. A relentless, silent pressure building beneath one of America's fastest growing regions. This pressure will create two fundamentally different disasters, unfolding just miles apart. It is a tale of two very different suburbs, each facing a unique form of destruction dictated by the ground beneath their foundations. First, there is the west side. Suburbs like West Valley City, Taylorsville, and Kearns. These are communities built on what used to be the floor of Lake Bonneville, a colossal prehistoric lake that vanished thousands of years ago. It left behind a legacy. Hundreds of feet of soft, fine-grained, water-saturated sediments, a harmless geologic feature until it is shaken. Then it undergoes liquefaction. The word gets used casually, like dramatic shorthand for unstable ground. It is not dramatic shorthand. It is a precise technical designation for a genuinely catastrophic physical process. When the intense, prolonged shaking from a magnitude 7.0 earthquake hits these saturated soils, the ground holding up roads, schools, and homes loses its strength. It stops behaving like a solid and starts behaving like a fluid. To put that in terms you can picture, a house in West Valley City will suddenly find its foundation supported not by firm earth, but by something with the consistency of a thick liquid. It will begin to tilt. The ground around it may bubble and flow, pushing mud and sand up into yards and streets. Heavier structures will sink unevenly. Lighter, buried structures, like fuel tanks and sewer lines, can float to the surface. The shaking is not just worse here. It is amplified by 5 to 10 times. Seismic waves enter this deep bowl of soft sediment, and they get trapped. Recent research, published just last year in the journal Jaeger Solid Earth, confirmed this terror. A team led by University of Utah professor Dr. Fan Chi Lin used advanced seismic imaging to map the basin. Their findings were stark. The sediments are even thicker and deeper than previous models showed. The Jell-O bowl is deeper than we knew. This means the shaking will not only be stronger, but it will last longer, echoing back and forth between the bedrock of the mountains for up to 2 minutes. An eternity when the ground has lost all integrity. A building does not need to collapse to be a total loss. It just has to sink 6 feet into the earth on one side. This is the fate waiting for the west side. Not from being on the fault line, but from being miles away from it, on the forgotten floor of an ancient lake. Then there is the East Bench, neighborhoods like Cottonwood Heights, the Avenues, Sandy, and Draper. These communities are not built on the lake bed. They are built directly on and adjacent to the Wasatch Fault itself. They face a completely different threat, surface rupture. While the west side sinks, the east side will split. The Wasatch Fault is what geologists call a normal fault. This means the tectonic plate is stretching. When it snaps, the valley floor, the hanging wall, drops down relative to the mountains, the footwall. The result is a sudden, violent vertical offset. Scarps, cliffs created in an instant. The 2015 Erie scenario for a magnitude 7.0 event estimates that this ground rupture could be 6 to 12 feet high. Imagine a quiet residential street in Draper. In one moment, it is a flat, continuous ribbon of asphalt. In the next, the western side of the street is 10 feet lower than the eastern side. A house caught directly on that line will be torn in two. One half stays put, the other half drops a full story. Gas lines, water mains, sewer pipes, fiber optic cables, all severed instantly. There is no engineering solution for this. You cannot build a home that survives being bisected by a 10-foot vertical shear. The danger zone for this rupture is a legally defined area. Utah's state government maps these special study zones around the fault traces. But for decades, homes were built right inside them. Before the science was fully understood, before the regulations were in place. A house on the East Bench with a beautiful view of the valley might have its back patio sitting directly on the line of catastrophic failure. The owners may not even know. 2 cities, 2 suburbs, 2 distinct simultaneous destructions, one drowned by the earth, the other broken by it. And what connects them is not just the shared earthquake, it is the buildings themselves. Here is the part that should stop you cold. The vast majority of the 2,750 projected fatalities will not come from liquefaction or surface rupture. They will come from bricks. Utah has over 140,000 unreinforced masonry buildings. Buildings. Mostly built before 1975, the year the state finally adopted building codes that made this type of construction illegal. These are the classic, charming brick homes, the historic downtown storefronts, the neighborhood schools that define the architectural character of the region. They are also brutally dangerous. Unreinforced masonry means the brick walls are just that. Bricks stacked on top of each other with mortar in between. There is no steel rebar connecting the walls to the foundation. No metal ties binding the walls to the roof. The structures are heavy and rigid. When an earthquake's lateral, side-to-side waves hit them, they do not flex. They shatter. Seismic engineers have documented the failure sequence countless times. First, the brick chimneys, often weighing thousands of pounds, snap at the roofline and either crash down onto the street or punch through the roof, crushing whatever is below. Then, the connection between the walls and the roof fails. The heavy roof pulls away, and the brittle brick walls peel outward, collapsing onto the property. Or, they collapse inward, trapping and crushing the occupants. This is not a theoretical model. This is what happened during the magnitude 5.7 Magna earthquake on March 18, 2020. That earthquake, which struck at 7:09 in the morning, was not the big one. Not even close. A magnitude 7.0 event on the Wasatch Fault would release nearly 90 times more energy. The Magna quake was just a trailer, a preview of the feature film. And even in that preview, dozens of buildings were wrecked. Bricks rained down on Main Street in Magna. Chimneys toppled across the valley. Historic buildings were immediately condemned. Ivan G. Wong, a senior seismologist who studied the aftermath, confirmed that the damage was a direct warning about the immense vulnerability of the region's building stock. The trumpet fell from the Angel Moroni statue atop the Salt Lake Temple. If a 5.7 could do that, what will a 7.0 do? The problem is not a secret. The state knows. The cities know. Even the homeowners know. Programs exist. The most famous is Salt Lake County's Fix the Bricks, a FEMA-funded initiative to help homeowners pay for seismic retrofits. It is a good program. It saves lives. But it is not enough. As of October 2025, the waitlist for the Fix the Bricks program was 3 to 5 years long. 3 to 5 years. Thousands of families living in homes they know are structurally unsafe, waiting in line for a grant that may not arrive before the ground starts shaking. It is a waitlist for survival. This is the quiet, horrifying calculus of the Wasatch Front. The geologic clock is ticking towards year 1400. The waitlist for a solution is 5 years long. The math does not work. The 140,000 brick time bombs are still standing, distributed across every neighborhood, on the liquefiable west side and the rupturing east side alike. They are the great equalizer in this disaster. The ground might fail differently, but the bricks will kill just the same. To understand why this danger is escalating, you have to understand the science that is emerging right now. The threat is not static. Our understanding of it is getting clearer, and every new discovery makes the picture worse. Consider the work of Sreesaran Sridharan, an assistant professor at Utah State University. In a study published on May 29, 2025, he analyzed rocks taken directly from the Wasatch Fault's Brigham City segment. He did not look at the strain or the timing. He looked at the rocks themselves. His team found that rocks damaged by ancient earthquakes, rocks that have been shattered and broken in previous magnitude 7.0 events, have significantly less friction. They are smoother, more slippery. This is not an abstract geological finding. It has profound implications. A fault line with less friction may be more prone to slippage. It means that once an earthquake starts, it could propagate more easily, potentially leading to a larger rupture and more violent shaking than if the rocks were rough and locked together. The scars of past earthquakes are making future earthquakes more dangerous. Then there is the work of Dr. Brady R. Cox, an earthquake engineering expert also at Utah State. He looks at the buildings. The new ones. The ones built to modern code. The ones everyone assumes are safe. And his research is deeply unsettling. He argues that current seismic design codes used along the Wasatch Front may be underestimating the actual force that a magnitude 7.0 earthquake will place on these structures by more than 25%. Read that carefully. The minimum standards we use to build schools, hospitals, and office buildings today might not be high enough for the earthquake that is actually coming. Not some fringe theory. This is coming from a leading professor at a major university's Earthquake Engineering Center. Code compliance prevents immediate death via collapse. That is its primary job. It is not designed to guarantee that the building will be usable after the earthquake. Your home might remain standing, but it could be so damaged, so twisted and broken, that it will be red tagged and you will never live in it again. This is the gap between public perception and engineering reality. Safe does not mean survivable without total loss. It means you are more likely to get out alive. It does not mean you will have a home to come back to. When you project this across 78,000 to 84,000 displaced households, you are talking about a refugee crisis on the scale of a major hurricane, appearing in the space of 2 minutes in a landlocked state. There was a small tremor on February 13, 2026, a magnitude 3.5 near West Valley City. Anxiety spiked. Phone lines at the University of Utah seismograph stations lit up. The Utah Geological Survey issued a statement. They said what they always say, that small quakes are normal background seismicity. They do not mean the big one is imminent. And they took the opportunity to say something else. They reminded everyone, again, that the 2020 Magna earthquake was not the big one. It was a warning shot. The new science, the warnings from engineers, the constant low-level reminders from the fault itself, they are all moving in one direction. The risk we thought we had is smaller than the risk we actually face. The ground will shake longer than we modeled. The fault may slide more easily than we assumed. The buildings we thought were safe may not be safe enough. And the clock keeps ticking. The economic catastrophe that follows an earthquake of this magnitude is almost impossible to comprehend. The initial Erie report projected $33.2 billion in short-term losses. That number covers building damage, immediate business interruption, the direct costs of the physical destruction. a staggering figure. But it is only the beginning. The Utah Seismic Safety Commission, the state's own advisory board, has floated long-term recovery cost estimates that climb as high as $75 billion. $75 billion. What does that number even mean? It means more than just rebuilding. It means the cascading failures that ripple outward from the initial shock. It means the transcontinental oil and gas pipelines that cross the Wasatch Fault are severed. Natural gas supplies to the entire West Coast could be interrupted. It means the fiber optic cables that carry a huge portion of the nation's internet traffic, which run through the Salt Lake corridor, are cut. Communication failures on a national scale. It means the transportation network is shattered. Interstate 15, the north-south artery of the western United States, would have collapsed overpasses and ruptured roadways. The Union Pacific rail lines that are critical for national commerce would be twisted and unusable. Salt Lake City International Airport, built entirely on liquefiable soil, would have buckled runways and a damaged terminal. The city would be cut off. It means the water supply is gone, not just for homes, but for firefighting. Ruptured water mains would leave firefighters helpless as blazes ignited by broken gas lines spread through dense neighborhoods. The earthquake triggers an urban firestorm. This is what $75 billion starts to look like. Not just a local disaster, but a national disruption. The economic engine of an entire state switched off in minutes. Businesses that rely on just-in-time logistics would see their supply chains evaporate. The tech sector of Silicon Slopes, the financial services, the distribution centers, all of it stops. For how long? Months? Years? The population of the Wasatch Front is over 2.5 million people. Most of them live in the zone of intense shaking. Where do 84,000 displaced families go? FEMA can set up temporary shelters, but that is not a solution. It is a band-aid on a severed limb. Do these people rebuild? Can they afford to? Many will have paid off mortgages on homes that no longer exist, sitting on land that is now worthless. Insurance may not cover the full cost. If they even have earthquake insurance to begin with, most Utahns do not. Do they leave? Does Utah see a mass exodus of the skilled workers, the families, the taxpayers that form its economic base? A city can survive a disaster, but it cannot survive its own disappearance. The story of what comes after the shaking is a story of economic collapse and demographic crisis that could last for a generation. The choice to build a city here was a choice to accept a certain level of risk. But the growth of the last 30 years, the explosion of population and development, has multiplied that risk exponentially. More people, more buildings, more infrastructure, all of it piled on top of a fault line that is nearing the end of its cycle. There was a version of this place that was a quiet, manageable city nestled against the mountains. That version is gone. It has been replaced by a sprawling metroplex, pushing out onto the most dangerous ground, building faster than the safety measures can keep up. The waitlist for Fix the Bricks is not just a bureaucratic delay. It is a perfect metaphor for the entire region. The growth has outpaced the preparation. The demand for safety has overwhelmed the supply. And underneath all of it, the quiet, patient arithmetic of tectonic strain continues. 1 to 2 millimeters. Every year. Unseen, unfelt, unstoppable. So what does it feel like? When the moment arrives, perhaps it is 2 p.m. on a weekday. Schools are full of children. Offices on the East Bench are occupied. The buildings that house small businesses downtown are bustling. The first sign is not a sound. It is a wave, a low-frequency P wave that moves through the rock at thousands of miles per hour. Animals might sense it. Sensitive electronics might register it. Most people will feel a sudden, jarring lurch. Seconds later, the S-waves arrive. The violent, side-to-side shaking. This is the moment the bricks fail. In a historic school in the avenues, the unreinforced walls begin to disintegrate. The roar of the quake is drowned out by the splintering of wood and the thunder of collapsing masonry. In a home in Cottonwood Heights, the ground outside the window drops away. The patio shears off. The view is no longer a backyard, but the raw face of the earth, 10 feet below. In West Valley City, the shaking has a different quality. It is a rolling, liquid motion. A bookshelf topples. Then the floor itself begins to tilt. A crack snakes across the living room wall, not because the house is breaking, but because the foundation is sinking. Outside, the streetlights sway violently and then begin to lean as the soil beneath them loses its cohesion. Water and sand push up through cracks in the asphalt. The earthquake has become a flood of earth. The shaking continues. For 90 seconds, for 120 seconds. It feels like it will never stop. Communication is gone. Power is gone. The only sound is the roar of the earth, the crash of falling structures, and the high-pitched alarms of a million cars. When it finally stops, the silence is what is most terrifying. A cloud of dust hangs over the entire valley, thick and choking. The iconic mountain skyline is the same. But the city at its feet is broken. Sirens begin to wail, but they are distant, struggling to navigate streets that are now impassable obstacle courses of debris and ruptured ground. That is the vision contained within the cold, hard numbers of the Erie Report. That is the lived reality of a magnitude 7.0 event. It is not an abstract concept. It is a sequence of sensory experiences. A series of moments that will be seared into the memory of everyone who survives it. On the west side, the ground has liquefied. On the east side, it has broken. Two different endings, written by the same fault line, arriving at the same instant. Every day, another fraction of a millimeter of strain is added to the geologic debt. A debt that science tells us will, one day, be paid in full. There is no plan to stop it. There is only a plan